Greetings everyone. It's a wonderful sunny day here. Bit of a wind, gentle breeze, and it's today, Wednesday the 28th of January 2026. Trust that you're well and that you are enjoying what you have to do today. Today I want to carry on from what I said in my previous video. The saying that you shall reap what you sow. And it's surprising today when you look around how many people don't really believe this saying. They might know of it, they might mention it, but do they really believe that what you do and what you say will come back to visit you again? Especially if you did something bad or said something bad, that there are repercussions, there are results for such things. It's somehow you see people think as if what they do and they say is not seen. It's past, it happened, and they move on. But there are repercussions for what we do and what we say. But just to remind you and put it into context, yesterday, the previous video, I spoke there about the fact that there's reaping for what we sow, and it's not only about individuals, but for peoples and nations. And I use specifically the example of the United States of America, where they rejected God in their schools and in their curriculum, and even to a large extent their religion. And the repercussions are happening. There's reaping of what they've done in the past. Most people think it's just a matter of politics, when what they're doing about catching illegal aliens without documentation and deporting them, what the ICE is busy doing in the States, and some terrible upheavals are happening there. And in my contention, that is part of the reaping of past injustices and violence, unjust laws and behavior. But back to the individual, it's all about how we treat people, how what we do and what we say. God sees everything. God judges. God executes judgment. And he repays. There's a scripture that says, vengeance is mine, I will repay. Especially when there's injustice taking place, unfairness, and wicked behavior of individuals, peoples, and nations. And what's important here to mention is the element of time. God's time is not our time. This is the reason why people will do things and say things and think that it's past and nothing's going to happen. But God sees everything, and judgment takes place in God's time. It may happen in a day, it might happen in a week, it might happen in a month, and it might happen in a year, and even in some cases decades before judgment is executed on the perpetrators of wickedness and evil. Just to mention that universally, it's mentioned as it's called karma. I like to say, for instance, that the world calls it karma, but the believer calls it God's judgment. And it surely will come, this judgment. As I said, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, I will repay. Now, just to end off this short talk, to take the United States as an example, and we're talking about time, the peoples and the nations think that slavery of the past, the transatlantic slave trade, and all the cruel and wicked behavior of people towards people is gone and forgotten, and there's huge attempts to cancel out that history, that people mustn't mention it, mustn't actually recall it, or mustn't actually even read or study it, especially in the United States of America. But as I said, even if it takes decades, if it takes centuries, God's judgment still applies. And we're seeing that this judgment on the United States of America is happening today in many other instances and examples. I've just mentioned, for instance, about the ICE and the repatriation or the expulsion of people without documentation illegally in the United States of America. And that's just one example. So you either believe this or you don't believe it. As I said from the beginning of this talk, that people hear and say, and they can recall, or they can quote that scripture, you know, what you sow, you will reap. But do they really believe it? Because in their actions, some people have done things, said things, but somehow or other, it's not seen, it's not heard, there's no result, there's no repercussions about it. So just to conclude, that is something on the individual level, and it also applies to peoples and nations. Have a great day further.